Imagine getting life-changing advice straight from the legendary Miles Davis. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore, and even when he was alive, learning from him wasn't always straightforward, as he often communicated his wisdom through actions rather than words. But don't worry, I've done the work for you. I've delved into his autobiography, watched countless documentaries and interviews about his life, and I ended up with a lot of notes. And I mean, a lot of notes. All this to save you time and uncover the top 3 mistakes he'd warn you about if he were here today. Hey there, if you're new here, I'm Davide, and this channel is about music, creativity, and learning from the greatest artists in history to improve our lives and unlock our creative potential. So, the first mistake is dwelling on the past. To avoid that, we should do 3 things that Miles practiced throughout his life. The first one is embrace change. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "Panta rhei," everything flows. Change is the only constant in the universe. Similarly, Buddhist teachings emphasize the concept of impermanence. Nothing is forever except change. Miles Davis understood this in his bones. "I have to change" is like a curse. Constant change was at the heart of Miles Davis's music, and as a result, he was at the forefront of several new musical genres. Cool jazz in 1949, hard bop in the mid-50s, modal jazz and orchestral jazz in the late 50s, avant bop in the mid-60s, and jazz rock in the 70s and 80s. He kept innovating throughout his life, eventually playing with artists like Prince and working with hip-hop producers like Easy Mo Bee in 1991. Because of all these stylistic changes, Miles Davis is often compared to Picasso, who also had different artistic periods. The Blue period, the Rose period, the Cubism, etc. Interestingly, the two met in Paris in 1949, and at the end of his career in 1991, Miles Davis was even awarded the Chevalier of the Legion of Honor by the French culture minister, who called him the Picasso of jazz. But apart from his musical career, which itself shows his constant evolution, there are several episodes in Miles' life that illustrate how he embraced change. In the late 60s and early 70s, as music technology advanced, another change occurred. Instruments transitioned from acoustic to electric. Davis once again embraced this change. He recognized the potential of these new electric instruments, and he encouraged his bandmates to experiment with them. One of them was Herbie Hancock. On the final day of the recording of Miles in the Sky, Hancock arrived at Columbia Studio in New York, and he couldn't find his piano. So he asked Miles what he should play, and Miles pointed to a Fender Rhodes electric piano. Initially skeptical, Hancock thought to himself, "You want me to play that toy?" However, he quickly mastered the new instrument and became passionate about electric instruments and synthesizers in general, as shown by his later music. Hancock said of that day, "I learned a big lesson. Don't come to a conclusion on something based on someone else's opinion. Form your own." Miles was committed to change and evolution, even with the risk of unsettling his fans. The album Beaches Brew, recorded in 1969, featured a large ensemble of musicians, 3 keyboardists, 2 bass players, 2 drummers, and 2 percussionists, creating a huge rhythm section. When you add the psychedelic cover by Matty Clarvine, it becomes clear why the album unnerved jazz purists. But Miles was right. This album, along with Kind of Blue, became his best-selling records, and it gained recognition as one of jazz's greatest albums, and it's now considered the Big Bang of jazz rock. Another example is the album On the Corner, recorded in 1972 with a 13-piece band. It featured very little melody, focusing instead on groove, and included also a sitar and a tabla player, just because he wanted to incorporate some Indian elements. While it's been called the most hated album in jazz, that never stopped Miles from pushing boundaries and innovating. He gave a clear lesson on the concept of moving forward and embracing change to a jazz fan who came up to him one day in the 70s and said, "Miles, you are my man, but that new shit you are into, I just can't get with it." Miles looked at him and replied, "Should I wait for you?" The second thing we should do to avoid dwelling on the past is to step out of our comfort zone. Keith Jarrett, a now legendary jazz pianist, provides an interesting insight into Miles' thinking process. He was visiting Miles when he was ill, and he recalls Miles saying, "You know why I don't play ballads anymore? Because I love playing ballads so much." Miles suggests that stepping out of our comfort zone sometimes means letting go of what you love to do. He recognized that what helped you in the past might hold you back in the present. Davis always encouraged his musicians to work outside of their comfort zone. Herbie Hancock recalls the time he played in Davis' second quintet. Miles wanted us to live on the stage in front of the people, creating in front of the people. In other words, don't lean on what you know. What he was looking for is the stuff that you don't know. The third thing to do to avoid dwelling on the past is to not rest on our laurels. Sometimes growth requires less reliance on past successes and more openness to something new. And Miles never looked back. Miles' son Erin said, "Miles never talked about his old records. He didn't keep them in the house. He didn't have any of them, not one of them. He didn't want them in there. He only wanted the stuff he was working on." And many stories from Miles' life prove that he wasn't resting on his laurels. He never really enjoyed his past successes, just for the sake of it. In the 70s, Miles told one of his musicians, "If you learn any of that old shit, you are fired." Late in his life, from the electric periods onwards, Miles repeatedly explained why he didn't want to perform his earlier works. In his view, remaining stylistically static was the wrong option. He said, "So what or kind of blue, they were done in that era, the right hour, the right day, and it happened. It's over. But I have no feel for it anymore. It's more like warmed over turkey." Quincy Troop, a journalist and biographer of Miles Davis, recalls an episode when Miles met a friend on the street. He was in a good mood and asked,
"What you doing this weekend? Want to come to the concert? I'll get you how many tickets you want."
His friend replied, "Oh, can you get me 4?" He went to the phone booth, he called his agent and booked the tickets. Then he asked,
"Is there anything else I can do for you?"
The friend asked, "Could you please play My Funny Valentine?" which was one of his old recordings. Miles replied,
"I don't play that old shit. Go listen to the record."
Even Shirley Horn, a famous singer he collaborated with in the 90s, insisted that Miles reconsider playing tunes from his Kind of Blue period. But he said, "Nah, it hurts my lip." His ideas were clear, always moving forward. "I know what I've done for music, but don't call me a legend. A legend is an old man with a cane known for what he used to do. I'm still doing it." The second mistake we should try to avoid is being afraid of failure. One of the fascinating aspects of Davis' working practice was his special relationship with mistakes. Herbie Hancock remembers how Davis was completely non-judgmental, viewing errors as creative opportunities. He recalls an episode from 1967 when he was playing in Davis' second quintet in Stockholm, in Sweden. That night they were communicating almost telepathically, playing exceptionally well. As suspense and tension were building, he recalls, "We were right in the middle of playing Miles' iconic composition, So What?" Miles was in the middle of his solo and I played this chord that was 100% completely, entirely wrong. It was so wrong. I believed I destroyed the evening like a house of cards. I was shocked. So what happened at that point? Miles took a breath and played some notes that made Herbie's chord right. It took Herbie years to understand what happened. Miles didn't hear what he played as a wrong chord. He simply heard it as an unexpected chord. I had judged what I'd done. Miles didn't judge what I did. He heard it and heard it as part of the music. Something new that came into the music. That chord was like our life events. Whether good or bad, they always have the potential to be learning experiences. But if we are not open to that perspective, the lesson is invisible and potentially lost. The note next to the one that you think is bad corrects the one in front. You think means you are already judging what you did. All this reminds me of an old Zen story. Once, a wise Chinese farmer and his son owned just one horse to work their fields. When the horse ran away, the neighbors lamented his bad luck. But he said, "Bad luck, good luck, Who knows? Days later, the runaway horse returned with 10 wild horses. Now the neighbors congratulated the farmer on his good fortune, but he replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" As they attempted to train the wild horses, the farmer's son fell and broke his leg. Again, the villagers expressed sorrow, but the farmer remained calm, saying, "Bad luck, good luck, who knows?" Soon after, the king's army came to recruit young men for war. Seeing the son's broken leg, they left him behind. The villagers celebrated the farmer's good luck, but again he said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The truth is, we don't always know whether an event, in our case a wrong chord, will prove to be good or bad. However, if we accept and experience these events as they are, we have the opportunity to build something positive from them. Do not fear mistakes, there are none. And finally, the third mistake we should try to avoid is overlooking the power of simplicity. While he likely never met the architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, Miles surely would have appreciated the philosophy behind his motto, "Less is more." Miles understood the power of silence. He was an enemy of the horror vacui, Latin for fear of empty space, a term that in visual art refers to the tendency to fill every inch of artwork with content, avoiding any perceived emptiness. Don't play what's there, play what's not there. His trumpet solos were characterized not only by the notes he was playing, but also by the silences he held between them, which forced the listener to lean in. This created a sense of drama, tension, and anticipation, allowing a single note to resonate with far greater impact. I always listen to what I can leave out. Miles had a way of playing that sounded like a stone skipping across a pond. He just touched on the waves. Sometimes he leaves a note out, and I've seen people literally like this, waiting for that next note. Miles could play one note. I've seen him play one note, and some of these high rollers that came to the club would say, "That did it for me, that did it for me, I just got my money's worth." Another story involves Herbie Hancock's experience while playing in Davis' quintet. Frustrated by his own playing, Hancock found himself trapped in a cycle of repetition, unable to break free from the familiar. One night at the iconic jazz club Lenny's on the Turnpike, Miles sensed Hancock's struggle, so he leaned over and said,
Don't play the butter notes.
Confused by this enigmatic advice, Herbie wondered what Miles could possibly mean. But since it came from Miles, he knew he had to mean something.
I figured that he meant don't play the obvious notes, because I was thinking butter might mean fat, and fat might mean obvious. You know,
the most obvious notes in a chord are often the third and the seventh because they define the nature of the chord. Herbie realized that by leaving out these notes, he could use a lot of other notes for his solo that would still work with those chords. It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play. So, let's remember these three mistakes that potentially are holding us back. 1. Dwelling on the past, which we can avoid by embracing change, stepping out of our comfort zone, and not resting on our laurels. 2. Being afraid of failure, which we can avoid by being non-judgmental, by viewing mistakes as potential opportunities, and by remaining open to new possibilities. And 3. Overlooking the power of simplicity, which we can avoid by remembering that less is more. At the end of his life, Miles said, "When God punishes you, it's not that you don't get what you want, it's that you get everything you want and there's no time left." I hope this video was useful and that these life lessons can help you get everything you want. As you have seen, Miles' wisdom remains relevant today, but there is still much more to learn from his life. For example, if you are curious to know what happened when Miles auditioned Herbie Hancock, and more importantly what we can learn from it, click on the next video. I'll see you there.